Ons gesels vanoggend oor e-sigarette, rook en of die een beter is as die ander een. Ons verwelkom vir Dr. Yussuf Salojee, die uitvoerende direkteur van die Nasionale Raad teen Rook. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Goeiemôre. I will speak English. Ek sal Engels praat, maar my Afrikaans is baie vrot.
Dis doodreg, geen probleem nie.
Ja, my in Engels hoor.
Scientifically, what is vaping? What is going on inside these products?
Vaping is a way of getting nicotine to users. Basically what you do is there's a liquid which is heated up to produce a fine vapor which is then inhaled. Now the vapor contains nicotine. It also contains something called propylene glycol, which when you exhale it, that's the smoke. And then it has flavorings in addition to that. So that's basically vaping. The difference between vaping and smoking is that when you smoke, you burn tobacco. And when you burn anything, whether it's leaves or braais or tobacco, you're going to produce thousands of chemicals. In cigarette smoke, there's over 7,000 chemicals and 69 things that can cause cancer. So that's why smoking is terrible. E-cigarettes, in comparison, are less harmful because they don't have all those chemicals, but they still do have some.
It's quite interesting, but if you say smoking, it's like for people that doesn't understand it. It looks like smoke, but it's not. If you blow it into like an animal's face, it's not like they will go like this, or maybe it's more of kind of because it's kind of wet, as if as jy nou verkoue het en jy sit jou kop nou hier onder die ding. It's like steam,
right?
More steam kind of thing. I don't know than just like smoking a cigarette.
Well, firstly, yes, you're right. It's a vapor.
Yes.
And that's why they don't call it smoking, they call it vaping.
Okay.
But the vaping, it hasn't got water in it because what you're heating up is
that oil.
Is that oil, yeah.
Yes.
Which
so
is
that oil's still
glycol.
burning.
The oil is still burning.
Yes, okay.
But it's also got glycerine, which makes it also, glycerine is a type of fat, which makes it also friendly. So as you say, it hasn't got all the chemicals like the hydrogen cyanide and the carbon monoxide and the carbon dioxide that cigarette smoke has, but it's not 100% safe.
Can science conclusively prove that vaping is healthier than smoking?
That's a very difficult question to answer. Yes, science can prove whether vaping is less harmful or more harmful than smoking. The current evidence is very clear. If we look at the number of chemicals in e-cigarettes vapor, you'll find it's much, much less than from cigarettes. But what is the effect of inhaling nicotine and other chemicals over the long term into vapors? And we don't know. So it'll only be possible to say after a few more years of study. But yes, we should be able to show whether it's less harmful than cigarettes or not.
Can science conclusively say that vaping in and of itself is either bad, good, or neutral to the human body?
Again, this is an interesting question, and it's something that the scientists are studying at the moment. So at the moment, look, vaping's only been around for 10 years, and it's only been popular for the last 2 or 3 years. And it was 10 years after we first suspected that smoking caused lung cancer before there was scientific evidence to show that smoking not only caused cancer but heart disease, etc. So you need time. You need long-term studies. So yes, we will be able to show it, but I think the main thing people need to remember is this. You get smokers, you get vapors, and then you get the people in between who both smoke and vape. If you only use vape, it's possibly less harmful than smoking cigarettes. But if you both vape and smoke, then there's very little benefit.
Yeah, what I've also seen is when people do both. Because now you smoke outside, you need to go outside, it's a lot of trouble to go smoke. Now you use your vapor like inside the building, whatever, but now you still get more nicotine in. You used to, let's say, 20 cigarettes, but now you still smoke your 20 cigarettes, but you use your vapor while you're in the car or at the office, so your nicotine levels basically doubles. Does that happen?
You're absolutely right. And that's the worst way to use an e-cigarette, which is to use it in areas where you can't smoke. Because it's usually for people, especially when you're at work and you're not allowed to smoke, your nicotine intake goes down because you're not smoking.
Yes.
And you have fewer cigarettes. But if you vape, you'll keep your nicotine levels up and your nicotine exposure will go up as well.
On that point, I was a smoker for a couple of years and I stopped now for a couple of years. But I was vaping. And even with these two in studio, because it's a stressful environment, especially when we started, I was like constantly on this vibe. And I was like, was it harmful to them? Do I owe them? Can they sue me?
Well, firstly,
Take me to court.
fantastic that you actually switched from cigarettes to only vaping. The effect of secondhand vaping. There's again evidence that there are heavy metals, there's nicotine in the stuff that's exhaled by vapors, and volatile organic chemicals. So potentially, it's harmful to them. And the government is now thinking of prohibiting vaping indoors, just like we prohibit smoking, because we still need evidence. We still need to do the studies. But I would say initially that, of course, vaping is potentially harmful. Not as bad as smoking, but still potentially harmful to them.
Hendrik, net jou kyk of jy nog by is.
Ek is by.
Nee, wil net kyk, want as jy nie by was nie, is dit my skuld. Oor die vaping. Ons gaan nou verder gesels, baie interessant. As jy enigstens 'n roker is of dan ook e-sigarette gebruik. So bly geskakel.
Ons gaan voort met vanoggend se gesprek oor e-sigarette, rook en of die een beter is as die ander een. Ons verwelkom weer eens vir Dr. Yussuf Salojee, uitvoerende direkteur by die Nasionale Raad teen Rook. Ons waarsku net dat van die beeldmateriaal sensitiewe kykers mag ontstel. The World Health Organization released a paper on vaping in 2016. What are some of the essential points discussed, and what is your opinion on these? Please discuss 3 to 5 of the most important elements.
Okay. The WHO did release a paper looking at e-cigarettes and electronic nicotine delivery systems, and it came to a couple of conclusions. The first is that it has the potential for good, but it is not safe. The best advice to people is to stop using tobacco products and vaping completely. The other thing the WHO recommended is that e-cigarettes need to be regulated. At the moment, there's no there are regulations, and we can talk about that in a second. But in most countries around the world, they're not regulated. That means you can put anything on the market, you can make any claims about it, and you can sell it to anybody. And the WHO is saying that it needs to be regulated either as a medicine or as a tobacco product, and is recommending that that should happen.
Let's move on to the legal side of vaping. What laws are currently in place in terms of vaping in South Africa and abroad?
There are 2 sets of laws that apply to e-cigarettes in South Africa. The first is the Medicines and Related Substances Act. And that says that any product which contains nicotine and is used to help people stop smoking or as a substitute for cigarettes is regulated. It's a Schedule 3 drug. What that means that it can only be sold on prescription from a pharmacist and cannot be advertised. Now, clearly that's not applying because the e-cigarette manufacturers are claiming it's not used for helping people to stop smoking. So there's no application to the Department of Health for e-cigarettes to be used to help people stop smoking. And they say it's not a substitute for cigarettes. People only use it for fun. So they escaped that. The other law that should apply to it is the Tobacco Products Control Act. Now, that applies to tobacco products, but e-cigarettes do not contain tobacco, and therefore they fall outside of it. But some e-cigarettes use tobacco extract as a flavoring. And if they do contain tobacco extract, then they will fall under the Tobacco Products Control Act. So we're in this no man's land where the one law is not applied properly and the other one, if I look at somebody vaping, I don't know if they've got tobacco in it or not. And so we're not sure what's happening. So that needs to be sorted out.
There's also this conspiracy with like the tobacco companies in the beginning that created or paid scientists to say how bad vaping is and cigarettes still bad. That fight, do you on a daily basis see that tension between the vapers and still the tobacco companies, or not that much?
Not with the tobacco companies anymore, because the tobacco companies have now moved into vaping. Okay. So you'll find all the big tobacco companies, certainly in Europe and in America, the vaping industry is now controlled by the big tobacco companies. In South Africa, that's not true yet.
Yeah.
But I assume that they'll soon make a bid for the independent manufacturers. There is a tension, and that tension is between us in public health So we've got people in public health who say vaping is the best thing people can do. We must encourage people to move to vaping because it's less harmful than cigarettes. And other people who are saying, hey, the science isn't in. We don't know enough. You can't recommend something where the evidence is not clear.
Yes.
And so we've got people like the Royal College of Physicians in the United Kingdom saying we must vape, and the World Health Organization saying be careful, it's too early to say anything concrete.
There's also one thing that I've read is the danger of teenagers, because it's a very cool thing to do, this whole vaping culture, and it's beautiful vaping and it looks good and it's funky. But now all of a sudden they would have never became addicted to nicotine, but now they're using the vaping and all of a sudden they get addicted to nicotine.
That is one of the biggest fears, is that young people will be encouraged, who don't smoke, but will be encouraged to take it up. And in the United States at the moment, more kids use e-cigarettes than smoke cigarettes. So vaping is a fashionable thing that is taking off, and that's what we have to make sure doesn't happen in South Africa.
Hubbly Bubbly is also very popular amongst teenagers.
Hubbly Bubbly is very similar to smoking cigarettes.
Yes.
Okay? Many young people are under the illusion that it's safer than cigarettes, and especially because the smoke goes through water and they think the water takes all the dangerous chemicals out. It doesn't. There is nicotine, there's tar, there's everything in the smoke from Hubbly Bubbly. And we know it can cause lung cancer and heart disease. But there's other diseases that you can get from Hubbly Bubbly that you don't get from cigarettes. For instance, you can get TB. And you can get the herpes virus because you share the pipe. And when you share the pipe, you pass on your germs from one person to another. Whereas smoking doesn't cause TB. Smoking makes it worse. If you have TB and you smoke, you're much more likely to die.
And the thing about Hubbly as well, what people don't realize, is because that smoke's been cooled off by the water, you take in much more smoke into your lungs than with the cigarettes.
Absolutely. And you smoke a cigarette in 10 minutes. Hubbly Bubbly sessions go on for an hour, if not more. And it's a very social activity for many young people. And our advice, it's a tobacco product, please do not use it. It's simple as that.
Op daardie noot sê ons baie dankie vir Dr. Yussuf Salojee, uitvoerende direkteur van die Nasionale Raad teen Rook. Vanoggend in die weegskaal, e-sigarette teenoor rook. Ons vind uit of die een werklik beter is as die ander een, en ons gesels met Dr. Yussuf Salojee, uitvoerende direkteur van die Nasionale Raad teen Rook. Ons waarsku net weer eens dat die beeldmateriaal sommige sensitiewe kykers mag ontstel. What are the current laws on smoking in South Africa and how do the two compare?
Cigarettes are heavily regulated in South Africa. E-cigarettes are relatively unregulated. Of course, if they strictly applied the Medicines and Related Substances Act, then it would be much more strictly regulated. But the problem at the moment in South Africa is that it is legal to sell e-cigarettes to young people under the age of 18. You can use e-cigarettes wherever you want. It's possible to advertise it as well. And the World Health Organization recommends, and the National Council Against Smoking says the same, that we need to regulate e-cigarettes. So young people should not be able to buy it. You should not be allowed to vape where you're not allowed to smoke. And certainly you should not be advertising e-cigarettes, because advertising makes young people think that vaping is going to be cool, sophisticated, clever, smart thing to do. And we don't want to encourage young people to vape. So the government is suggesting that we modify the Tobacco Products Control Act to include e-cigarettes as well. And that should happen sometime this year.
It's quite interesting. If you talk about advertising, you don't see a lot of vaporizing advertising, like especially on TV. It's as if they're still making money and it's building up. In your opinion, I mean, you've been working with against smoking and with smokers and not smokers, and that's one of the biggest things people try to just quit, and it's one of the most difficult things to quit. In your experience, what is the best, the chappies or Champix or the pills or the vaping? What's the easiest way to stop? Because I think that's the big question.
I think that's the question many people battle with, and that's one of the reasons why e-cigarettes are going up in popularity, because people want to stop smoking, they don't know how to stop, and they think that might be a route out. The best way, firstly, is to make up your mind that you want to stop smoking. Have good reasons. If you have a good reason for stopping smoking, you can do it. The first thing, 2 or 3 days after you quit, you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And if you can't answer that question, you'll go back to smoking. We suggest that people call the quit line. We'll give them free advice on how to stop smoking. Then there are medicines that are available. There's, I'll use the commercial names. There's something called Zyban, and there's also something called Champix. But both of those have side effects, and therefore you need to get them from your doctor by prescription, and they're only available from chemists. And there's, of course, nicotine replacement therapy, which is the nicotine chewing gum, nicotine patches, which also you can buy over the counter at a chemist. All of those help you, but you need to be certain that you want to stop smoking. I always say it's willpower, want power, not willpower. If you want to stop, you can, and help is available from the National Council Against Smoking.
Would you say that in terms of vaping, it's more affordable than the use of cigarettes?
No. That's one of the reasons why vaping hasn't taken off as much. You can buy a cigarette on the street for R1.50. But if you want to vape, you have to buy a e-cigarette or whatever it is, and that can cost you anything from 300 rands to 400 rands. Over the long term, vaping might be cheaper because the refill cartridges are cheaper than buying cigarettes. But you need to make that initial investment of a few hundred rands to buy the e-cigarette. So it's not cheaper than cigarettes at the moment.
On that note, we have to say goodbye, but thank you so much for joining us. Dit is Dr. Yussuf Salojee, uitvoerende direkteur van die Nasionale Raad teen Rook.